Hello, my friends. This is Christian. Today we're going to look at a home decor utilizing the Woodlands Adventure stamp set from Kindred stamps. This is a project that I am making for my nephew, and I hope that he's going to love having it displayed in his bedroom. The first thing that I did was stamp and cut out of Masking Magic by Gina K my masks for the characters that are going to be on my scene. The scene is going to be drawn on a piece of white Express It cardstock to really reflect my vision. There's going to be various trees, a nice winding path, and I'm going to have my little characters on top of my design. You can see this is a giant piece of paper, which now requires the giant Misty to come out of storage. I am going to first assemble my images onto the giant Misty and try to get an idea of what I want to see. I will then line up my stamps onto the project. There's Oscar, he says hi. You can see that I did not stamp all of the images. I was only stamping the images that are going to be in the foreground, meaning that they're going to be in front of something. So you can see my little character in the middle is missing his bear pal. So what I'm doing now is placing all of my masks onto the characters. This is going to allow me to then stamp my little bear on top of the little friend, and we're going to be able to have the smaller character in front of my larger character. So I'm going to go ahead and ink that up and put it on the piece of paper. You can now see that it looks like I stamped on top of my little friend, when in reality I did not, because the masking paper is blocking. When placing your masks onto your characters, you want to ensure that the mask fit inside the black lines of the images that you stamped. So when cutting out your mask, you're going to cut exactly on that line, and then take your time and adhere those very particularly. By taking your time, you're going to ensure that when you are ready to do your next steps of coloring or ink blending over those masks, you will not have a halo around that area that then you have to figure out how to color in again. After a little cleanup, I was ready to make my scene come to life. Using a fine liner marker, I went in and actually drew in what I had sketched lightly in pencil on my piece of paper. This actually makes my scene not look like there's just characters floating out there. You can actually see what is happening and what my true vision was for my design. Before I am able to start ink blending my background, I needed to go in and erase all of those pencil marks. This was essential because when you are utilizing your inks, they are transparent. So if you did not erase those pencil marks, you would have the ability to see them and not erase them after the ink is on top of it. I pulled out my Altenew Crisp inks in the colorway Sand Dunes and utilized this to give a rustic old piece of paper, kind of like a map look. I'm going to go ahead and speed through this because watching someone ink blend is not that exciting. To enhance that worn old look, I did use some gathered twigs on the paper and spattered it with a little water and a fan brush. My favorite part is the peel and reveal of the images. When you remove those images, you can actually see the scene, and it's kind of like a coloring book ready for you to color again. These masks have lots of life to give yet, so you'll see that I am sticking them on the back of my stamp sheet. This will allow me to use these any other time that I need to layer up some images or do any of that other fun stuff. Once I had my mask removed, I did go in and clean up the images with an eraser. Next thing I did was pull out my Olo markers. I'm going to show this in a little bit of a slow time here, just so you can see how long the process actually takes, because I am not a colorist. I can color an image to get the look that I am trying to achieve, but I am not a master. I am still learning how to use alcohol markers. I have had alcohol markers for about a year now, so this process is a learning curve. The only way that you can get better at coloring is by coloring. Prior to utilizing alcohol markers, I did color pencil, watercolor, or use Zig Clean Color Real brushes to actually get my colors onto my images. I am still experimenting with my alcohol markers on different types of cardstocks, different color combinations, and just understanding how they work and how they flow. Different techniques that you can utilize for going through and making your images come to life and have some of that dimension that we like to see when we're coloring. During the coloring of this piece, I did utilize a couple different techniques. One being the tip to tip, where I'm picking up a little ink to get a little more blend from one marker to another. Or you'll see where I have scribbled some ink down onto my glass mat and I just pick it up with that lighter tone to give that color and dimension that I was looking for. Or if I felt like my choices did not blend as nicely together and I needed to have a medium color in between. I hope that you take time to dig through your products and actually use them. The only way that you can become better at something is by practicing. We learn by our mistakes. I don't call them mistakes, I call them opportunities to improve, because that's the only way we really learn. Mistake makes it sound like it's a bad thing. It's not. You're learning. That's what we're supposed to do. Mistakes are encouraged because now I know how not to do something. I know that if I hold my marker down too long, it's going to bleed on the paper a little bit more and then you have a blob. Okay, I learned that as a lesson and I now know that, hey, to make this look better, I need to do this. Or if I am putting my colors down and I know that red is very aggressive, maybe I'm going to wait till the very end to put red down because I have a tendency to pick it up on accident because, I'm not the best at lining up and staying in the lines. That's why they have that nice little zero marker that you can push the stuff back again when it gets a little bit out. But I tend to pick up colors because I'm not as precise as maybe I should be. Again, opportunity to learn a new way to do things and being able to challenge myself. In the description of this video, you will find my color combinations that I utilized for each of these characters. While I finish coloring all of these characters, I'm going to save you from listening to me ramble about nothing and play a little music. I will meet you back at the 10-minute mark. Welcome back. With all my coloring now complete, I am going to be able to finish my design. Looking at my little honey pot, I thought it looked a little blah and it needed a little kick. So I just took out my pencil and then again my marker and wrote the word honey with maybe a couple letters backwards. This will give my picture those fine details that hold the picture all together. Now that my image was complete, I wanted to trim down my paper to have a frame that would go around and mat the image itself so it looked more like a piece of art. The original piece of paper that I started with was 8 by 10. I did take a 1/4 inch off of the sides and then also cut down a piece of satin colored brown paper. This will then be matted with the image to give it that framed look. Pulling out the stitched alpha dies from Kindred stamps, I cut out the name Asher. This will be lined up on my panel and then we'll have a sentiment a little bit later on. Because I wanted my piece of art to have some dimension and be 3-dimensional behind the glass, the letters were stacked up and glued together and set aside to dry. While that was drying, I did add some foam tape to the back of my artwork. I wanted again to have that dimension behind the glass. With the foam tape ready to be adhered, I did line up my paper on my glass mat utilizing those grids to ensure that I am placing my piece of art equally with the correct margins on all sides. I was now ready to place my sentiment onto my piece of art. To make my sentiment, I utilized a spare piece of that same espresso cardstock. I did so because I will be doing some ink blending on this same paper to make it match the worn look that I had prior. The paper was prepped with an anti-static tool, stamped with Versamark embossing ink, and then I placed some embossing powder over the top of it. That was a pretty pearly brown color. Went in with the same ink that I did prior to give it that look that I wanted. The image was then trimmed down because this was going to be a sentiment panel that would be part of my piece of art. Have no fear, I cut out a ton of footage there because it just would have been easier if I would have used a sentiment label die to cut this out so that it would be nice and straight, but you know, gotta just keep trimming and trimming and trimming until it kind of looks straight. Oh well, lesson learned. With that opportunity in the bag, I am now ready to align my name onto the panel. To do so, I utilized the grid lines on my glass mat and a T-square ruler. Placed a piece of low-tack tape on top of the image, added a little glue, and then lined up my image onto my art. I then added my sentiment that had been popped up as well onto the page. Now another opportunity learned was let the glue dry and then you don't have to fight with the little letters coming up when you're peeling off your low-tack tape. Would have been the smart thing to do, but I'm impatient. I finally went in and added a few white gel pen details to give some reflection and life to our images. To complete that matted look that I was looking for when I placed my image into my frame, I did add another piece of black cardstock behind my brown textured cardstock. My piece of artwork was then placed inside the frame and assembled. I am so happy that you came along on this journey with me. This was a big adventure and I hope that my nephew loves this for his birthday. If you would like to have some more opportunities with me, click the subscribe button. You don't want to miss what's going to happen next.